If you did, I didn't get them. So if you would send them, that would be great. Yeah. Okay, so we're picking up with deviant behavior, and we're looking at the connection between the American dream and deviant behavior. We were talking about Robert Merton the last time we left off in our very short time in class because we had that group activity. But the 100-point assignment that's due next week, the documentary film analysis, one of the questions that's on there asks you to consider the sociological definition of the American dream. Maybe we have this in our notes from Monday. Did we do that? I know we were talking about what the American dream is in general, so let's just make sure, even if it's review, let's make sure that we've got a good sociological definition of the American dream in our notes. You can also find it in your textbook. But the American dream is about following rules, really. If you look sociologically at what we mean when we say the American dream, this is about being able to be successful. You're supposed to be able to be successful in life if, here's the big if, okay? If you work hard, you follow society's rules and work hard. You will see this definition worded differently in different textbooks. It will always have these same concepts in it. Whatever definition however a definition is worded, it will always be about playing by society's rules, working hard, which is one of society's rules, and that's supposed to pay off for you in the end. The idea is if you do these two things, you're going to see a payoff, and that's what the American dream is supposed to be all about. If you work hard and you follow society's rules in the United States, we don't have somebody who's going to walk around from the government and knock on your door at the end of the week and say, how much did you make this week? And they're going to take 80% of it and walk off, like they did in the feudal system that you'll learn about in England, in your classes of world history and that kind of thing. The serfs had to work for the feudal lords, and they took everything that they had, all their surplus. That doesn't happen here, right? So we have this idea of the American dream where we can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and we get to keep the benefits that we earn from pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. That's the concept of the American dream. What we say on Monday, how we mainly in the United States measure what success is? By your status. It's three statuses actually. Three statuses together. Good. Occupation, income, and education. I hear somebody behind me. I think that was Marsha's voice. Occupation, income, and education are the statuses that are really important to us. And from these things, this combination, how do we ultimately, casually, on the street, seeing people, how do we measure whether somebody's successful or not? The status symbols that cost money, right? The status symbols. Like that tattoo on that guy's neck was a status symbol, right? It's not a status symbol about being wealthy and, and smart. It was a status symbol about being a partier, right? But it was a status symbol. Yes, so we measure success through these things, and it is usually linked ultimately to the almighty dollar, right? It's not just a t-shirt from Kmart that is a status symbol. It's a t-shirt from the Under Armour store, right? There's a difference between those two things. So we measure success typically by the money that someone has access to or seems to have access to. Now we kind of measure it by our credit scores too, right? Because does that give us purchasing power, right? But if we're supposed to follow society's rules and work hard, we're supposed to be able to enjoy life a little bit. We're supposed to be able to have success in the form of a great income, an occupation that we're proud of, and educational attainment that gives us that occupational opportunity, right? That's following the rules. How long does it take?
A while.
A while, right? This college this college voyage that you're embarking on right now, 4 years minimum. You want to know how many years it took me? 7. It took me 7 years for my 4-year degree to be completed, and then another 3 for a 2-year master's degree to be completed, and I'm in my 4th year of trying to get my PhD now. And yes, this gray hair is real from the stress, right? From the stress from that. But anyway, the American dream kind of pushes us toward that hard work. It pushes us toward tolerating it. All of us, or do some of us not tolerate it?
Some of us don't.
Some of us might not tolerate it, and that's where this Robert Merton guy comes in that we were talking about on, not that he doesn't tolerate it, but he made observations that some people give into the stress that is associated with this because this has stress involved, right? And that he basically said that some people buckle from the strain. And they try to find a quicker way to success. Or a quicker path, let me say. A quicker path to success. And one of them, there are actually 5 different types of people. When you're reading in your textbook, there's 5 different types of people that Robert Merton identified. One of the types is not a deviant person. One of the types is called a conformist. And we know that to conform means to follow rules. So I expect that every single one of you in this classroom, because you're putting yourself through this experience, is a conformist. I would assume. Y'all are trying to follow these rules and live by that American dream. So a conformist is one type of person in society, but he identified 4 different types of deviant people, and we're going to talk about 2 of those types. We've already talked about an innovator. That was from class on Monday, I think. How did we say an innovator was deviant? So yeah, they like this norm. They like the norm about money. They don't reject that idea. They want to go ahead and have that money and the status symbols, but instead of going through all this length of time, the hard work that it takes to get it in the socially approved of way, they try to find a new way to get it. That's what innovation means. It's doing something in a new way, right? So these people find a new way, a new path to success. But they still want success. They still want that money. So they're not deviant entirely because they want to have this money and they want to participate in society in that way. They want to participate in the American dream that way. But all the hard work that takes forever, they would rather skip it. What's an example?
Instead of selling drugs.
Okay, so anybody who does any kind of illegal activity, right? So yeah, so whether it's drug dealing or you have a theft ring or something and you're selling hot items or something, anything that you do that tries to bypass the hard work and go straight to the success, yeah.
That might be gambling.
Well, one of the examples in your textbook, maybe you're trying to make money from gambling, yeah, which is not a normal profession, right? But yeah, one of the examples in your textbook is an entrepreneur. Any entrepreneur that tries to, so the people who go to Shark Tank, for instance, would be trying to be innovators. People who inherit wealth instead of having to work for it. Mm-hmm. You could argue that people who inherit wealth like that are innovators. Yes, if you for instance, with Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, who did Apple Computer and Microsoft Computer, yes, they are examples of innovators because I think they got as far in college as you are right now. I think they were sophomores in college when they dropped out, and I don't remember exactly how those stories went, but they were somewhere in their college path when they invented the computer, the personal computer, together, I think. Do I have that story right? Anybody know?
You do.
Yeah, so after they invented it together, they kind of parted ways and went different paths with that. But yeah, they are innovators because they were entrepreneurs that had a new invention and wanted to make money off that, and boy did they ever, right? By the time they were 25, 26, 27, in that range, they were millionaires. I don't know how much money Bill Gates has these days. He has some kind of $1 billion foundation that he started from charity that he makes, right? Yeah, Bezos, the Amazon guy, and the
He's really mean.
and the what's his name? Fred Smith, I think, is the name of the guy who started Federal Express. Y'all know that company, like UPS, the shipping company, FedEx. Yeah, he started that in college. He was in an intro to business school or something. So innovators try to find a new path towards success. They try to avoid this. And so since they're not following this part of the normal way, then Robert Merton said they are innovators. Okay? And another one of the types of people that Robert Merton identified as deviant, based on this American dream concept, is called a retreatist. A retreatist. A retreatist pulls away from both sides of the American dream. They don't care about the money. They don't care about the way to measure success in society. Money and material objects are not important to a retreatist. And that's odd.
What's that, like a backpacker?
Yeah, sure. If you want to travel the world with just a backpack, sleeping under trees when they have not, when you find a place, sure. Yes, you're retreating. You're not completely removing yourself from society. You're still walking down our roads with your backpack. And you rely on us to a certain extent because maybe I'm going to buy you a meal or something, right? Toss a $5 bill at you, when you hold your sign up. But yeah, a retreatist doesn't care about the money and also has no interest in the hard work or the daily toil. No interest. No. In the hard work either. Oh no. Actually, the Amish example would be a different type of person on his list. It would be called a ritualist, where they do the hard work all the time, but they don't care about the money payoff for it. Yeah. A lot of times public servants, for instance, like police officers and firefighters and stuff, they're putting their lives on the line for their work, and they're not paid very much. So they're considered ritualists, according to the way that Robert Merton defined that other. Sometimes teachers are considered that, yeah, especially like the elementary through secondary teachers. But a retreatist, this is a person who, as their master status, might opt, instead of occupation, income, and education being their master status, homelessness might be their chosen master status. Do you and I have a whole lot of respect for a person who's homeless? Typically, people in society don't. I mean, thank you for being honest. Typically, people in society don't. Yeah, that's quite often the attitude. Our attitude about homeless people, most often, not across the board, but most often, and where are we getting this attitude from? The attitude comes from this idea about norms in society.
We're working, and the fact that we're just going to give our money away to people that aren't even doing it.
A retreatist doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving your money to this person. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving your money to this person, but they just don't want to play the game that you want to play. They don't want rent due. They don't care about an unlimited data plan. Who cares about a permanent address? I am going to eat just fine if I get food out of the back door of the grocery store where they're throwing it out anyway, instead of going through the front and paying way too much money. So there's, if you don't want the bills, if you don't want a boss calling you saying, where are you for a shift, if you don't want that rat race.
So these retreatists aren't people that live off of welfare and stuff?
No.
Okay. They just don't care.
No, that's actually a ritualist. I would actually go with another one that I guess I should have talked about too, since there have been two different questions about it. But these are the two I wanted to talk about. Yes?
You said something earlier about a retreatist, that their ascribed status.
Their achieved status, their master status, they don't participate in the norms for the rest of society as far as what their master status is going to be. In the United States, when we were talking about achieved, ascribed, and master statuses, we said that in the United States, these 3 achieved statuses are usually imposed on people as what your master status should be. Imposed on people because the macro scale social structure says this is what the USA is about. This is what the USA is about. Therefore, it translates into these being the most important achieved statuses, the most important master status, therefore. So a retreatist is deviant, according to Robert Merton, because they don't care about any of this. They don't care about success measured with money. They sure don't want an alarm going off telling them they have to go to work. They absolutely don't care about whether you are going to measure them as worthwhile people, whether they have the proper occupation, income, or education. They don't care about this.
So every retreatist chooses.
In many cases, yes. I would not consider someone who, by unfortunate circumstance, outside of their control, outside of their wishes, becomes homeless for a period of time and struggles to become unhomeless. That's not the kind of person that a retreatist is. However, in places like LA, where my mother-in-law lives, the weather is like 75 degrees 12 months out of the year. It rains very, very infrequently. They have really good grocery stores that throw out food because the expiration date is one day off. Because if you go in the front door of the grocery store and you're going to spend your money on something, are you going to buy something that the expiration date is gone? Or if you open eggs to check your 12 eggs and 2 of them are broken in there, are you going to take that carton of eggs? No, you're going to get a different one. And so what can the grocery store do with 10 eggs? They don't have 2 extra ones, in the back to replace them. And so they often throw that kind of stuff out too. So, studies have been done. I'm not just speculating about this. There's a lot of studies that have been done about places where homelessness is a really easy lifestyle to adapt to. Many people choose it.
Why?
It's an easy life.
What's easy about it?
Oh goodness, you don't have any bills, there's like no stress. The weather's great, the beach is right there. Not for some people. Maybe. Yeah, so retreatists don't care about the American dream. They don't wrap their self-identity into these statuses.
I want to interview a retreatist, but I'm probably never going to run into one in my lifetime. Well, actually...
You can. There's many sociologists who have interviewed retreatists. There's a documentary film in the what's it called? Oh shoot! His name is Mitchell Dunier. And what did he? Sidewalk. Sidewalk is the name of a documentary film. Actually, Spike Lee did the documentary. It's called Sidewalk, and it's about homeless people in New York City who try to sell repurposed stuff on the streets of New York City. Anyway, y'all can watch that video if you would like, and it will be the next best thing to interviewing your own retreatist.
Okay.
Okay. Where's the... Oh, somebody want to take a very close-up picture of this? Not at an angle, but close up?
I sent that, those pictures.
Thank you. Make sure you don't get it at an angle, you just get it really close up. And you don't need the word sidewalk in there. That's just the name of the video. Thank you. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So.
Okay.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about, the last thing that we need. That's perfect. The last thing that we need for deviance, our deviance discussion, is to look at deviance. We're still going to use the American Dream as a guide, but we're going to look at deviance through the lens of a conflict theorist. This guy, Robert Merton, I just erased his name, but this guy, Robert Merton, was a functionalist. He said that society is stable across the board, right? And so these norms associated with the American dream, these norms associated with those achieved statuses, those keep society stable and orderly over time. And because we have pressure to follow those norms, that's why some people become deviant. Okay, so that was his explanation. But now we are going to still look at the American dream, this concept of the American dream, and examine it from conflict theory instead. Preston.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
I'm still on Retreatist. So you were talking Monday about how the American dream means something to different people in different parts of the world.
Yes.
So someone who were to come to America but have an unfortunate lifestyle, but they're like, oh, this is the best thing ever. Is that person a Retreatist? Would that person be considered a Retreatist?
No.
No?
No. And when we say the American dream, and I just want to clarify just something that you said, America is from Canada all the way to Chile and Argentina at the bottom of South America. So America is like the whole continent. We use this word to mean what?
Here, yeah. Okay.
We use the word to mean the USA. So
the United
the
States.
US. Yeah. So the US. But everybody. Okay, do y'all have a question that I can answer? Okay. All right, so the American dream, I guess I shouldn't have raised the definition, but it's if you're willing to work hard, put in the time, you'll be successful. Right? That's the sociological definition. So conflict theorists look at this, and a conflict theorist is going to be interested in looking at social structure on the macro scale with what kind of lens? What are they looking for?
Something
Problems.
to make them mad.
The haves and the have-nots. The haves and the have-nots. The conflict here is the struggle for control, struggle for resources, struggle for rights, privileges, etc. We can keep on struggle for money. Some people have it. We call them the haves. Some people don't. We call them the have-nots. Okay? So conflict theory is about looking at society on the macro scale, just like functionalists do. So they look at society on the macro scale, just like functionalists do, but that's the only similarity they have with functionalists. When a conflict theorist looks at this macro scale idea of the American dream, which means being able to be successful in the United States of America, they look at people of power, powerful or influential people, and people who are powerless. Lack influence, lack political voice. The haves versus the have-nots. Somebody take a picture of this for me real quick. Can you do it? Just really quick, because I'm going to delete it. So, or I'm going to erase it. I guess that's the word. That's the word for the whiteboard.
So struggle for control, would that be struggle for status as well?
Absolutely. So for especially if we look in history about the right to vote, and we look at the ascribed statuses of race and sex, women and males of color had to fight for the right to vote, for instance. So this is a classic conflict theory story, where you've got a struggle for control of voting rights, a struggle for voice in politics, struggle for representation in government, that kind of thing. So those kinds of things, when we look at those struggles on the macro scale, across the board, you want to make changes to the macro scale social structure, that's how we look at conflict theories. Okay? Okay, so let me just clean this up a little bit so we can look at deviance. So conflict theorists are famous for the philosophy that people in power are the ones who make rules. People in power are the ones who get to make the social rules. What's another word for social rule?
Laws. No, wait.
Laws is one of them. What is it? Norms. Norms. People in power are the ones who get to make the norms. If you get to make those rules, do you get to use your own idea of morality? Do you get to use your own political interests, your own industry and
Biases.
economic interests? Yeah, you do. So people in power, maybe they have money, and so they can go to government, and they can influence government to make laws that benefit who? Themselves.
It's a little frustrating. Just a little bit.
For instance, well, right now, a current event right now across the nation is marijuana laws are changing, right? Whether it's for medical use or whether it's for recreational use. And in Arkansas, I think we're already open to a couple of different places in Arkansas where you can guess. Where is it? Yeah, the dispensary, I think there's 2 or 3 of them open. Yeah, in Arkansas already for medical marijuana. It took a fight. It was a struggle. It was a struggle for people to get access to legal supplies of marijuana, which I understand is very helpful with a lot of different medical issues, from what I understand. So, who do you think, on the macro scale, what industry do you think on the macro scale that makes billions of dollars annually might not want people to have legal access to a plant that's really easy to grow in their own backyards, and they would never need your product anymore?
Tobacco.
The pharmaceutical companies.
What?
The pharmaceutical companies.
I was thinking.
They're the ones with huge money, and they can call up the senators and the congressmen, congresswomen from the states, and they, the states that are considering these laws, and they can say, you know what, I'm Big Pharma, and I want to send you on this cruise to wherever you want to go, and I want to give you this information so you can consider how bad it would be for society if you legalize medicinal marijuana.
Okay.
Please consider keeping it.
Isn't
What'd
that?
you say? What?
I say chronic versus opioids. Like it's an opioid.
But yet, what's been legal for so long and what's been illegal for the other? So we can look at social evidence just from our own life experience and see that people in power can use their power. Maybe they have a seat in government, like you're a senator, or maybe they own a big corporation like AstraZeneca. What is it called? AstraZeneca, I think. One of the big pharma companies that makes not just opioids, like your example, but all kinds of anti-inflammatory drugs, all kind of anti-anxiety drugs, all kinds of drugs that supposedly marijuana has these benefits also, right? So if you are Big Pharma, you can donate money in the form of gifts and other things to the people who are the lawmakers. So when it comes time to consider and vote yes or no on a law, do you think that the people who have sent you to the Mediterranean to a trip to Greece to consider your legal options, or the people on the ground who need it in their fight against cancer, who's going to be most influential in making you decide that way? The people in power.
That's so wrong.
That's how a conflict theorist observes this. So if the American dream is about making money and being successful, then the conflict theorist says, okay, well, only the people who are already in power and already have money are the ones who are allowed to continue being successful. Let's look at the recreational side of marijuana for a second. Studies for years, sociologists have used the recreational marijuana issue as a research topic among college students nationwide. There's like 30 years worth of data collected from college students about recreational marijuana. Primarily the questions that college students get are about whether you would spend your money, if you are a beer drinker, would you continue to use your money to buy beer if recreational marijuana was legal and allowable? And across the board, overwhelmingly, the results for 30 years have been that if recreational marijuana was legal, people would go for that overwhelmingly over beer. No calories,
That's
no hangover. The reasons that are stated are no calories, no hangover, it's cheaper or something. I can't, you can grow it yourself. All these different kinds of things. So think about this.
That's
For
interesting.
30 years worth of data has showed us this, that's what people's preferences
Was
are.
it beer specifically or like alcohol?
There were it was like long list of
Okay,
stuff, but I'm
that's
giving you the beer. Yeah, I'm giving you the beer example. But who would be interested in keeping those studies quiet? Who would be interested in the beer companies? The beer companies. If you are Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch or Miller or whatever these companies are, and you see the results of college-age kids who are going to be the money earners later, if they're following the pattern for American Dream, why are they in college? To get a better income, occupation, and education. And so you're going to have the money later to continue to buy beer, or maybe you wouldn't if you can just grow a plant in your backyard the same way you do a tomato plant. Right, so that's a scary thing if your American dream is built around selling Budweisers to the population, right? So conflict theorists look at the way, what time is it? Look at the way people in power, thank you, people in power can use their influence to determine what the laws are, and most often the way that they want the laws to be written would benefit the haves. So it's this cycle. Does that make sense? I see like question marks on some people's faces.
I know, I was just.
You have a question?
amazed.
You look like you have a
So
question.
the cycle of haves versus have-nots would be make people have the things, the have-nots will just shift, right? Because not everybody can have everything.
Ask me right. Okay, yes. I now understand your question. Yes, so when we were talking about conflict theory earlier, it's a struggle for resources or rights or privileges or money or whatever. There is a limited supply of all those things. So so conflict theory, the reason it's a thing is because social resources, raw materials that you can use to make products with, to make money from those products, money itself, these things have a limited supply in a society. So the haves are the ones with the concentrated amounts of that kind of power and privilege and rights and access and advantage and control. So yes, it's a limited supply, so the haves get a hold of most of it. And why on earth would they let us get a hold of any of it? Because that might topple things or make them have a little bit bumpier of a ride. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Let's look, for instance, another thing. Let's look at crime. Oops, sorry about that. Let's look at crime and criminal punishment. Okay, because one of the things that Robert Burton was talking about, the American dream might motivate people to go into criminal activity in order to achieve the success image, right? So the American dream might motivate people to go into criminal activity, which is deviant behavior, right? In order to achieve that money, that status symbol or the image as though they have been successful in life. So a conflict theorist looks at that particular topic too, and they look at crime and the criminal punishment code. And when you do this on a macro scale, you can observe some interesting things, okay? In your section of chapter 6, which talks about crime and punishment, you will read about several different types of crime. We have different categories of crime. One of them is called a violent crime. We have another one called a corporate crime. And another one that these are categories, so we're gonna talk about the different kinds of crimes that fall under this category. And another kind of crime you'll read about is called public order. Public order crime. So I want to look at these three as a conflict theorist would. I want to examine these three categories of crime to see if we can find a have or a have-nots situation in the way these crimes are defined, and also the way the punishments are written. You know, crimes are written down in law books, and so if you commit a crime, if you violate a law, the punishment that you are eligible to receive is also written down, right? I can't put you in jail for the weekend because you jaywalk, right? If I catch you jaywalking, I'm going to give you a $25 ticket. That's not what the code says I can do for jaywalking, right? Not incarcerate you for a week, right? So the crimes are written down in law books. The punishments that you are able to, or that you might suffer if you do one, are also written down. So let's look at this. I don't know what page this is on, but it's toward the end of chapter 6, and you'll see organized crime, you'll see property crimes, lots of different kinds of categories discussed. But violent crimes have a specific definition. The violent crime, the victim is present when the crime occurs. So the victim and the perpetrator, I'm just going to put perp because I like that word. The victim and the perpetrator are both present when the crime is committed. So it's not a burglary happens when you're away from the house and somebody breaks in and you come back and your stuff is gone. A robbery happens when you are there, I'm there, I knock you over the head, I steal all of your stuff, and it's a robbery. You were present and the perpetrator was present. Not only did you have stuff removed, but I hurt you or threatened you, held you at gunpoint or something, knife point or something. So there was potential harm to the physical person of the victim, and there was monetary harm. Okay? Murder is a violent crime, obviously. Do what? Rape is a violent crime. Yes. Mugging, any kind of, these are felony acts. Felonies over $50 actually. $50 in value. Yes, sir.
Does it have to necessarily be physical to be violent?
I don't have to touch you, no. But if you're there and I'm threatening you with a baseball bat or something, and you're held off by some kind of threat of violence, it's still considered under this category of violent crime.
I'm thinking like blackmail.
No, that's going to be a different kind of crime. Yeah, that's going to be a different kind of crime. It's going to fall under. It'll fall under a different category. It might not actually. Not all blackmail would fall under corporate, but many of them. Many of those types do. Okay, so we're going to look at robbery today, and compare it to a corporate crime. But let's talk about corporate crimes really quick first. So corporate crimes, these are crimes where there is definitely a victim or victims. That means one victim or multiple victims when you have the S like that. But there's no threat of physical harm. There's no threat of physical harm. There is a perpetrator or perpetrators, and they benefit monetarily, but they don't threaten physical harm to a person. This is things like money laundering, some kinds of fraud. Like commercial fraud.
What's the same thing as embezzlement?
Embezzlement is another one. I'm sure I'm not going to spell that one correctly. Embezzlement. If I don't look at it, maybe I'll spell it right. Is that how you spell it? I don't know. Okay. So yes, these are the kinds of things that are considered corporate crimes. These are the kinds of things that have a casual name associated with them. The casual name is a white-collar crime. I can tell some of you have heard that phrase before. White-collar crime. What does a white-collar job or a white-collar crime, what is that referring to?
A STEM job.
It's referring to business fields that usually require higher amounts of organized education, like you are working toward right now, higher amounts of responsibility in the corporate world, managerial kinds of responsibility. The white collar is called a white collar job because typically a man would wear a white shirt and a tie under his suit jacket, and that's the kind of job we're talking about here with white collar. As opposed to a blue collar job, which some of you were talking about that guy with the tattoo only being able to maybe get a blue collar job in his lifetime. What's a blue collar job compared to?
No, like labor.
It's more manual labor. There might still be schooling, but it's not, you're not taking like finance classes and, philosophy classes and stuff in your schooling. You're taking apprenticeship kind of technical schooling, like you're becoming a welder or a plumber or an electrician. These kinds of things are blue collar jobs. So in other words, you have to be a certain type of person to even have the opportunity to commit a corporate crime. Not everybody in society has an opportunity to commit a corporate crime. You have to be in place in a company where you have an opportunity to do these kinds of things. So that leaves a good portion of the population out. A good portion of the population is never going to have an opportunity to commit a corporate crime. What about a violent crime?
Everyone can do it.
Anybody and everybody can do that one. Anybody and everybody can do a violent crime. So, let me tell you a true story about violent crime and a corporate crime that was committed right here in Arkansas. Y'all were babies, I think, when this happened, but I'll tell you anyway. Y'all know where Papa Top Liquor is over on University? Oh, did it move? There was a location of Papa Top Liquor on University for a long time. This is decades and decades ago. I thought it was still there, but maybe they relocated. Anyway, maybe 20 years ago, these two kids, I'm going to call them kids. They were 22, 20 years old, somewhere in there, but I'm sorry, people, that's a kid to me, okay? So they were kids, dumb kids, like probably the same kind of dumb kid that got that tattoo on his neck, right, without thinking about the consequences later. And they stole a van from a guy. It was a robbery. They stole a van from a guy, and later told police it was just because they were bored. And while they were bored and driving around in this van, they drove through the wall of Papa Top Liquor so that they could get with the van. And they scurried over. The reason I remember this so clearly is because Papa Top was one of the first places to have one of these surveillance cameras. And back then, the surveillance videos always looked like they were a little bit in fast motion. And so it kind of was funny when the news, when Channel 7 and Channel 11 would show that surveillance video, and the guys were like running with their packs of cigarettes and their cases of beer, trying to get through the rubble that they had created at Papa Top Liquor. And the van was like maybe $15,000 worth of van, and they damaged the building. It was probably a good $30,000 to fix that building, and I think it was like $100 of cigarettes and beer that they were trying to steal. So there was quite a bit of property damage, and there were people who were victims from their crime. And these two kids got something like, one of them, the guy who was driving the van, got like 10 years in prison. And the other guy, who was just along for the ride, got something like 4 years, was the sentence. Okay? And they got out in, shorter periods of time than that. They got out. So they were 25, 27, something by the time they got out. A large portion of their future lives ahead of them, right? They can maybe start participating in the American dream now, or can they?
No.
Why not?
Society's not going to accept incarcerated people.
They've committed a felony. Do felonies go away from your record once you get out? They stay there. So for instance, they were dumb kids when they did it, but they're 27 when they get out, and they've had a lot of good thinking time to do, and they're thinking about that 8th grade teacher who told them they were good in science and maybe they should do something in the medical field, and maybe they want to go into nursing or something in the medical field now. You think a nursing program would take them with their convict record?
Mm-hmm.
Radiology tech,
Mm-hmm.
occupational therapy. Sorry, we can keep on going down the list. These programs have regulations, and if you have a felony record, even if you never went to prison for it and you have a felony record, you cannot be admitted into those kinds of programs. And that's not all. I mean, as badly as we need over-the-road truckers in our society, that's a vital job that our society relies on. We need you people badly to go into over-the-road trucking programs. Most companies won't take you with certain convictions in your past. Certain convictions, most companies won't take you as badly as we need you to drive those trucks. So they have a mark for life. They're 27. They have their whole future ahead of them. But they don't have their whole future ahead of them because the way the criminal punishment code is written to punish violent crime, people who commit violent crimes, it's a life sentence, even if you get out in 2 years for good behavior.
That's why usually they return back every so often.
Well, that's called recidivism, which is a repeat offender, and it might contribute. I'm not going to say yes, absolutely that contributes to why people maybe commit secondary and third crimes, but it certainly can contribute to why people might repeat the offense. What were you going to say, Nadia?
I don't know, I was just saying, just like how they did, well, I don't know if it ties back to this, but like even if you didn't do the crime, in order for you to like get it off your record and stuff, you have to say you did it.
In some cases, you have to plea. Yeah, you have to do a plea bargain or something to not try. Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. So anyway, these kinds of crimes, property crimes that you'll also read about in your textbook, these kinds of things have really harsh penalties, and they have really low thresholds. You know, for a felony conviction, I mean, to be a felon, all I have to do is just steal one of your backpacks. I mean, the backpack itself is probably $50. If it's got your phone in it, wow, I might go up for a decade for, the sentence there, right? So this is not a very high threshold to actually get in trouble for, and the punishment is pretty severe, and it follows you for the rest of your life, whether you actually did prison time or not. Okay, another true story. It happened a little while after these kids did that Papa Top liquor thing. But do y'all know the name Lou Hardin? He was a president of one of the universities here in Central Arkansas, and I might not get this story exactly correct, but he was promised a bonus if he reached a certain goal for the university, and he decided that he hadn't quite reached that goal, but he needed to go ahead and have the bonus anyway, and so he gave himself the bonus. Essentially, is what he did. So that's something that falls under the corporate crime situation. And it was a big bonus. I want to say that it was like a couple $100,000. So it was quite a bit more than in damages than these kids over here. They were maybe $25,000, $30,000 of damage that those kids did. And this guy was like 10 times that in the $200,000 range. And so anybody remember that story, what happened with him? He was convicted. He did not do any jail time. He was on probation. He got convicted on probation, and he had to pay back the money, and then I think there was also a fine involved. Are you looking it up? Yeah. So pipe in if there's something I'm leaving out. It was $300,000, not $200,000. So it was he was doubling his salary in a year by giving himself that bonus. But you know where he is now? He doesn't live in Arkansas anymore.
There was no fine.
Oh, there was. It was just paying it back.
5 years probation.
Yeah.
And sentenced to 200 hours of community service.
And there wasn't a fine. And guess where he is now, y'all? Are you looking at where he's working now? Some university in some other state in a lesser job, but basically with the same.
Wow.
They allowed
The
that?
same responsibility.
They allowed that?
They just didn't disallow it.
They didn't disallow it.
What?
So let's put our conflict theory glasses on. Can we detect any haves or have-nots in this situation? Who?
Him. He's a
Get
have.
away with that.
Yeah, I mean, anybody in the position to commit a white-collar crime might not exactly themselves be haves. But if the haves are a member of any kind of group, which one are they going to most likely be? General public or somebody who has this qualification?
Someone who has a qualification.
Right? So they're the ones who probably are going to have the opportunity to, be tempted and to act on this kind of thing. Whereas any of us would be tempted to act on these kinds of things. And if it's any of us getting punished here, what's our sentence? And if it's any of them getting punished here, what's their sentence? So, did the American dream, is that at the root of why somebody might want to steal a van and steal beer and cigarettes? And is the $300,000, however much it was, that he wrote himself a check for, was that because he needed to buy some stuff? The American dream is what pushes us to buy some stuff.
Greed.
Does the American dream contribute to, I don't know if I completely agree with the idea of greed, but does the American dream kind of encourage us to be that?
Yes.
It could be.
It's very
It could be. So it's the same exact topic, right? American dream, macro level norms. From a functionalist point of view, hey, this is our society. It's supposed to be that way. That norm keeps us stable. We move along. We plug along from one generation to the next, following the American dream. Some people don't. Some people go into deviant behavior because of the pressure associated with the American dream. And then the conflict theory, let's put on those glasses. Yes, there is a macro scale social structure. Yes, the American dream is part of it. But are the people in power the ones in control of promoting the American dream all the time, promoting status symbols, promoting purchasing things, promoting, money, money, money as the measurement of the self? And therefore, can it bring about rules in government, companies controlling products that we're allowed to buy, or who's going to have what kind of punishment and how severe it might be based on whatever kind of law you might break, and who has access to these kinds of things and who doesn't.
We need to redefine the American dream.
Oh, I don't know. Do you think so? We could start a petition. We have the president of the Political Science Club with us today. We can start a petition to redefine the American dream.
Well, we redefine it too.
I don't know. That's up to you.
Understanding.
Do what?
Understanding equal footing, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds nice. You give me the plan, honey. I'll help you implement it.
We'll do it together.
Okay. Anyway, so the American dream is going to be a major topic that we're going to continue to discuss when we move into chapter 7, which is not going to be on Monday of next week. It's going to be maybe Wednesday or the following Monday when we move into that, because Monday is a work day, and you're not going to have a video to watch if you're my online student, and you're not going to have a lecture to take notes on if you're my face-to-face student, because we're going to do a work day so that everybody has plenty of time to complete what? The midterm documentary film analysis that's due when?
Wednesday.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so I will see y'all on Monday. Bring your stuff with you so that we can make a good